Pittsburgh. Please welcome the Jeffers.
Should have had that music when I was coming down the aisle. I do in fact have 666 as part of my birthday. So, I'm very professional. I always have a reading list on a napkin. So I actually, for me, Halloween, my joke is I dress like a serial killer tonight. Halloween for me is actually a fairly important thing. I think of it as one of the New Year's moments for me, when I get rid of old things and I get new things, or I start looking toward new things. The old furniture. My mother arrives after driving 6 straight hours, unable to see behind her the white car full of my accumulated furniture. The Morris chair she found for almost nothing and stripped, and I sanded endlessly one summer until it was glass smooth. The writing table bought after old Mrs. Riley, whose taste in tables was legendary, who loved wood smoothed by hours of use. Wood still standing solid in the summer of its existence, passed away, and her full house was sectioned and auctioned until nothing but light was left where her indefatigable furniture had stood. And the other chair, the only piece of furniture I wanted when my grandmother died, except the table my cousin got, reupholstered in blue velvet and looking nothing like the chair I sat in while I played for hours on her small electric organ, still full of the same threatening creaks that every summer, free from schoolwork, I would drown out with wild summer-inspired organ noise while she dusted the furniture upstairs or baked molasses cookies. Her jars were always full of things we never finished eating. At her kitchen table, we would play cards or name birds through the hot hours of August, or just sit and watch my grandfather do nothing but sleep in his hammock, or the cat sleep in the grass nothing could keep from growing. She loved Crazy Eights all those summers I made restless music and walked, listening to the wind thrash for hours, trees in the woods nearby, trees that probably became furniture for someone. Now my mother and I lug in the chairs and the table and arrange them precisely to get the full effect of their power against winter. The Morris chair, heavy and full of work, goes near the fireplace, makes a space nothing can chill. Near the window, we set the writing table, and beside it, the blue chair I spent dull hours composing in, tired of being tired. Like totems, the furniture begins to change, charge the room, as the bright hours of autumn daylight shrink toward December, into hours of nothing but darkness and cold light. They fill the house with summer growth and drive. I touch the furniture. I sit down at the table. Parsnips. When did I start chewing the roots of things, roasted with salt and pepper, the pale kings under the mountains? The young boy I once was, naked in the moonlight, while my best friend asked me questions about sex. Neither one of us had a clue. Both of us thin and white as these bodies whose skin I flay, whose thin trunks I whittle down into slivers, cubes. When he moved close one night, I didn't refuse what he wanted to do. It's a wonder I kept breathing. I was so afraid the heat he made rise was blood. I said, "Stop, that's enough." Later, at home, I did it though. Went all the way through the fear to another side of myself. Stood after and looked in the mirror. Thought I was beautiful to have survived. Just doing these rapid fire. I hope you don't. It's Halloween. Part of the undercurrent of all this is love, I'm sorry to say. It's probably the most frightening thing. It's the thing all serial killers stand to try to get rid of. Right? Or sex. The song. No one knows anyone who knows the song Orpheus invented in Hades anymore, but it must have had delight in it. Think about what it was up against, what it's like to sing in the tomb wanting love. Yes, to burnt eggplant parmesan. Yes, to warm weight of love in the middle of the night snoring, and you have to choose between pushing him out of bed or learning to live with it for everything else you'd miss. Against the queen of the dead's boredoms, her schedules among the various houses of heroes and suicides and drunks and martyrs, she had only to nod to. To break that heart enough, she would turn to her God, who was more odor than man, whose fingers were roots, whose eyes glittered but never ached, except that once long ago when he saw her. The gravesite for the singer widens. It's possible to make out of air and fingers and years of paying attention some space for the impossible. Whether it's possible to bring back the same is the problem. Orpheus couldn't, the wife of Lot. Neither of them idiots or charlatans or hard-hearted, just the reverse. They knew how to give, where to love, how to thank the gods in the room, knew who else was listening. And yet, in an instant of doubt, all of it taken away. I've spent most of my life thinking about that. My black lab has mastered the art of coming up the stairs at night without making a sound. Sometimes he follows me up when I go to sleep and jump onto the big bed with me. Sometimes he waits until I have settled and turn the light off before he arrives and throws his heavier darkness onto my feet. It's a little like living with a demon, a thought you can't, now that you've thought it, let go of. You have to see it to its end, however painful, whatever sacrifices. Even love suffers. You have to go forward and not look back, say the stories. There will be another lover, surely. Mathematics says there must be hundreds who might do. Astronomy and physics imply millions just waiting. New houses, landscapes, job prospects, dimensions. But, the song says, recycling history, but. It doesn't want to solve for X. It dissolves in Y. It makes us stutter in the step of the choruses whose promises seem too easy to make. It makes each body feel the weight of its want, even the queen of the dead who'd long given up knowing what she was married to for the comforts it afforded. Suddenly she remembered and couldn't stand it and told Orpheus, yes, take her, anything to get rid of you. But beware not to look too hard at what you're asking for. I think you know what I'm saying. Your song does. Have you listened to it yourself? The cold feet in the night, the arguments about garbage and toothpaste and family. Most of love isn't singing, but schedules and nodding. Most of it is forgetting and not knowing. Yes, some of it is piercing and being pierced. Some of that is worth keeping. Some of that. Think of how much easier it is to live alone with a good dog who obeys you and guards the house while you're sleeping. Why isn't that enough? Why not simply be happy you had it once? Somewhere in the story, maybe the story itself, I keep thinking, is the answer. Maybe love's impossible to ask for and impossible to save. And after we've admitted that, we still have to live. Oh, now I can't read the other dog one. Okay, never mind. So I think this is the last one. This is from the new chapbook, Southern Kitchens Press, Mistakes with A little history. The history of your lips would be the history of your eyes and what they did not say, so that my lips would have to ask your mouth to move or be silent. And then the history would haunt or horse around the history of the zipper, the history of the buttonhole, the history of the light on or off, which is the history of the new bed sheets, out of needles, out of fields of plants, whose seeds are hidden in clouds that come and come bursting right there in the middle of the field, depending on the history of runoff and pesticides and weevils, whose history is deeper than kisses, but not longer than two bodies separating in a darkness on a hurt, naked earth.